Okay, so part of this project was looking at the upstairs and specifically the kitchen and the washroom and how we can rearrange those to make things, open up a little bit more and flow a little bit better. So I took the measurements while I was there, and then this is what you see here. Then is existing. So basically, what you have right now. So then this plan also doubles as a demolition plan for you, the contractor, just so they sort of know what's in the scope of work. And there's a few notes here. So number one is removing these archways above these doorways that are here. Number two is removing a bit of this wall framing just to open that hallway up a little bit. And likewise this wall right here with that door just to open up that washroom. Number three then is basically replacing everything in that washroom, the shower and toilet and sink and whatnot, depending how far you want to go. And then number four is some things in the kitchen, removing that little bit of cabinetry there, the existing cabinetry here as well, and potentially relocating some plumbing and electrical depending on which layout you go forward with. So moving forward into the options then, so option number one, this one's probably my favorite. I think of all the options, I have 5 here moving forward, but this one I think is the most efficient and kind of offers the most, and you'll probably see that as we move forward. Now it doesn't have the bench seating. That's one thing you asked for here, with some bench seating along that wall for a dining room table. This one instead has more of the peninsula, which comes out into the kitchen space, and you have some seating on this side for 3 people, and in a pinch, I mean, you could add someone here, and maybe even here for 4 or 5 people if you need. And then that gives plenty of counter space, sort of wrapping around the kitchen. A bonus is we moved the stove over to this wall, so it's on an exterior wall, and then it can just vent right out the side, and you don't have to mess around with the ducts too much to make that work. The sink sits in the exact same spot basically as it is now. And then the fridge, normally the stove was sitting here, but then you can pull the fridge up a little bit and then box this space in where the stove is now, and that can become a pantry to sort of replace this little bit of cabinetry there. And the nice thing is this one's, it's wide open in the kitchen, so you have plenty of space to move around. It won't feel too cramped or anything. You are sacrificing the dining room or kitchen table there instead of, or in lieu of sort of that bar seating. So it sort of depends on your preference, but then again, lots of counter space, nice and open. I like the way that one works pretty well. And the washrooms are going to be all the same in these. So we've taken up that hallway space, and then basically you have room for a big tub with a shower if you want, or just a big stand-in shower, depending on how you'd like to move forward with that. And then, a big vanity and some room for a toilet and some towel racks and stuff in there too. So then that'll be the same on every option. But now moving into number 2, this one I don't love because it's honestly not much different than the one you have right now. I've put in that bench seating on this side, and then you get the table with 2 chairs. You could add a 5th one here if you need. But then it does cramp the kitchen a little bit. I've moved the stove up to here so that, again, it can vent right out that wall. The fridge then takes that place of the stove, but I've turned it 90 degrees so that you can get this bit of counter space and cupboard coming right down. So you gain a little bit of counter space and cupboards that way. But again, it doesn't seem like a lot of value considering you'd be paying the money to sort of rearrange your kitchen, ending up with what you almost have before. So I don't love that option. So moving on to number 3, this one is giving a little bit more space to the kitchen table, dining room table. And in doing that, it kind of tightens up the kitchen a little bit. So again, you have a peninsula coming out. You really only have room for one person to be working in there at a time. And you still have quite a bit of countertop, so lots of room to work. The sacrifice is you won't have many cupboards, I should say, up above the uppers. So you can have them on this wall here over the cupboards and stove, but then you could do uppers on this wall as well, but you probably wouldn't have them here. So you're sacrificing a little bit, and then the fridge then ends up around the corner, which is not ideal. I talked about having that the work triangle between the sink, the stove, and the fridge. So that one, it's not great, but it depends if you want to give a little bit more space to that kitchen table or not. So then moving on to option 4, not much different than number 3. This one takes away those cupboards on that back wall. and prioritizes a little bit more function because you get that nice work triangle between the appliances, but you are sacrificing a little bit more countertop. So on this one, you have virtually no countertop in lieu of a nice big table. You do get some pantry space back over here, which is nice for storage. It will seem fairly open. It's not quite as cramped in there, but in terms of functional space, I mean, it's lacking a little bit. But then that leads us to number 5. This is probably my second favorite option, I'd say. I've gone for a slightly smaller kitchen table. You could do a circular one in there as well, but that just gives a little bit more space to the kitchen. Again, allows that stove on this outside wall to vent. Sink's in the same spot. The fridge then sits where the stove is now, and you're getting a pretty good little work triangle there. And it's kind of like a galley style kitchen where a lot of your functional space is here, but then you supplement it with a little bit of an island out here. And this works pretty well for circulation because you still have this nice hallway, but then you can be passing around the island, which works pretty well. So this is drawn at 18 inches deep, which isn't a full countertop, but I mean, that's plenty of workspace for prepping dinner and stuff like that. You could have storage or cupboards below. So I kind of like the way that one's working. It gets a little bit tighter in here. I mean, you only have about 3 feet of space to move, but if someone's in the kitchen, you can walk around, so it's not that big of a deal. Again, this one will feel nice and open, so I kind of like this one, the way that it's working. The fridge, you have this little bit of awkward space in behind that where the stove is now. It's a little bit bigger than it needs to be, so I mean, you could box that in a little bit and maybe open up this side and have some coat racks or something on the inside of the stairwell. So you have, it's almost doubling as a mudroom or something like that. I kind of like how that works. But I mean, it sort of depends what you want to prioritize, if it's kitchen space or the table and the bench space over here. And a lot of these options, I mean, I've shown a table, but you could do a built-in bench with a table. You could do a combination like that for most of these. But I would say that number 5 and number 1, I think, are, in terms of what you're asking for and just the pure functionality and the amount of space and storage that they offer, I think those are probably your 2 best bets. So personally, I'd move ahead probably with one of those, but I mean, it depends what your preferences and stuff are. So maybe you like the bar seating, but maybe you really want that big dining room table, and this one just won't work. So anyway, I just wanted to walk you through some of those options and give you some of the pros and cons. This will give you a pretty good jumping off point to get in touch with the contractor and figure out how you'd like to proceed. So hopefully that's helpful, and we'll talk shortly. Thanks.